have legitimate things to say and have input for people. And you're going to kind of just grow your network organically. If you're just doing your thing and being out there about it, that's going to be huge. I just, you're talking about you found me through just posting videos and stuff on Facebook. That same stuff has led me just to get another mixing client out of Latvia, like Riga, Latvia. He's like,
wow.
I saw, like, I'm doing a gospel record right now too. And he saw me recording in a church with all these gospel artists, and he reached out, and he knows Brandon Allshouse already, who's going to be mastering this other track I'm mixing soon.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, he's an amazing dude, an amazing mastering engineer. And yeah, so it's just like, here's the community. He knows I've got the right mutuals and stuff, and it kind of grew like that. Or just locally in Vancouver, there's a lot of stuff. I've gotten to a little bit of a saturation point where I've got artists kind of reaching out to me, and I can do it and say like, hey, I've seen your stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of you. You track so-and-so with so-and-so. And I've able to just kind of spread it out. I'd love to do a bit more actual advertising and see what happens. But at this point, the projects have been coming in pretty nicely just from knowing enough people and doing good work. Like I'm a big nerd, and I like to show off, like, hey, I'm making these Vibo phones, taking a rotary telephone, wiring 2 XLRs to it, so you get 2 different flavors of mic. Yeah. And I've just got a new conversation with a production client about it, because I kind of knew what I was doing there. Like, let's get them in here. I'm going to make something that's inexpensive and neat. Someone's going to snap it up. They're going to come down to the studio, and I get to start showing them music. If they've never like hit play on a link I've shared, now I've got a chance to like talk about their stuff and meet them as a person. Like, this is organic. I'm not trying to trick anybody. It's just like, if they're cool, there's a chance we're going to work together if we've got cool stuff, because I can just be comfortable in the way I do my process. And, if someone, is a lot of people are on board for the no booth thing. They're like, I haven't had anyone like that before. I'm like, fucking why not? You're a great songwriter, but you need someone to like kind of be there a little bit more with you. But yeah, so I'll do like tip time videos, showing people little tricks and stuff. Nothing that hasn't usually been done before. I'm a product of the people I've reached out and watched videos of and stuff, and try and have as like a mentor at a distance. But just because I like the process. And if I'm not having that enjoyment in it, it's not going to come through. So people see how stoked I am on like, here's this weird freaking phone thing that sounds all lo-fi. And the 5 or 6 I've made, I've already seen like in studios being used. And again, it just kind of builds that connection a bunch. So it's like planting seeds for a lot of later on stuff. Like, it's just the networking thing. It's my own version of it by being a nerd, by doing, circuit bending of a weird little synth, and then showing that I made a quick top line to a track for an artist, by showing me remixing drums and using a bunch of guitar pedals, which I'm a big fan of, a la Joe Barresi kind of stuff. And you can have sounds that no one else has really had before. I just mixed a folk record, and I reamped his vocals through an old 50s military amp that I've had converted into it was a reel-to-reel projector amp turned into like now guitar amps. I actually bought 50 of them in a semi-failed business experiment. But I now have a whole bunch of really cool amps. I've sold the rest off to a different collector modifier guy who's going to do that job now, and I've got a bunch of really cool toys for the studio. So it's like all those little things come together, and I'm just kind of picking it up because, hey, I'm into it.
I think that's the main thing that comes across, like at least in the videos I saw on Facebook, was how psyched you actually are about it. Like, your personality comes through, and like this comes off as a genuine person who's super into doing these weird or geeky things, or just recording music,
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, there is a place for experimentation, and then you got to just know when the hell you've got to just get the job done. Not every mix needs to go through guitar pedals, and a lot of them don't, because it's like, oh, I just know I need to do this to get to the core of what needs to get out there. But it's the fact that I'm open to it that a lot of people are stoked on. I've had so many artists that I've had to go into a project with after they've been burned, like that Space Queen, that stoner rock project, more like desert rock now. We're right in the middle of doing another album. They got screwed over by 2 different producers for thousands of dollars that never gave them any kind of product. And I'm like, man, how do you do that? Like, how do you do that to a band? How do you think of this job in a way where you're taking advantage of them like that? And other ones where I've gone into a record halfway through because the other producer or label is just completely shitting the bed. And I'm stepping in trying to be like I don't know, like the nurse or the doctor trying to keep things together. It's like, no, this is still alive. We can still do it. Everything here is still valid artistically, but we need to kind of like go this way to get it out there.
How do people even get away with that these days? With the internet, like you know, there's like a cancel culture. Like you can't get away with this shit anymore.
These are just these incidences just happen before it, but you'll find a lot of artists just don't want to rock the boat, which I kind of feel is fair. Like these the Women in Space Queen in particular. They know a lot of much larger producers in town that I'm also like one of my mentors, Garth Richardson, who's done like, you know, Rage Against the Machine and huge records. They know him personally and from the previous project that got screwed over. But them being exposed to so many other people doesn't mean that they want to necessarily put themselves out there as the one to call someone to task. Although they still talk about wanting to do it. There's still like a fear of, you know, a backlash if someone's like, no, you're wrong, or you're just making stuff up. All those fears are valid. So to see that they didn't want to go that route with those people, I understand. I mean, I'll mention it anytime that person's name comes up in conversation, but those aren't really like, you know, it's not really the competition. I look worse from bringing up conversations of people to avoid, you know, and talking negatively. If there's a legit warning that needs to happen, that has to happen. But it starts to look poor if you're just talking negatively about, even if it's trying to be legitimate, like you're warning, like this person doesn't know that person necessarily. Why pop up to say things?
I hear that.
When we can just as easily, if it's about making sure they don't really get any work or just get ignored, we just don't talk about them. We don't recommend them. They don't, you know, if someone does bring them up, we say the right things to like maybe just dissuade someone. Not even if they're not working with you. It's like, oh, I've heard about so-and-so. I'm like, oh yeah, I think you'd be better suited going with, you know, this other guy over here just from what you're talking about with genre and vibe wise. And these are legitimate things that I believe.
That's like a nicer way to kind of tilt the scale in like the, I guess, newer generations direction, or people that don't do that. Not that older generation people do that, but like I'm assuming these are dinosaurs.
No, some of them are. Some of them are definitely dinosaurs. I've got definitely an anti-old boys club mentality. I really can't stand seeing some of that stuff. Like you can have groups of friends, and you can definitely have, you know, your people or your community, but the super old school exclusionary way to go, like the gatekeeping, I have like no time for. Like for this job, there's zero secrets. Whenever anyone says like, oh, this is my secret technique or my thing, and you're like, yeah, but someone probably came up with it in the 60s or something. And, you know, unless it's some esoteric plug-in thing, it's like there's the odds of it being done before so high. So you'll do better if you just show that you can do the job, make the great music. Here's the tricks I've learned, and talk about it, because not everyone can replicate what you do. Even if they know your plug-in settings for vocals, like they don't know how to get the vocalist stoked in the room, or the fact that you know how to teach them to sing through a microphone rather than in a microphone. Like those are all the little intangible things. So I'm just like against the secret keeping and the gatekeeping of this industry, where it's like, come on, like, you know.
The proof is in the the proof is in the pudding. Like, you know, Billie Eilish won the Grammy last year. She like literally recorded with her brother in a bedroom.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. And like 3 of the guests I had on the show just got nominated for Grammys, and these are real people that I had real conversations with. Like it's legit.
100% legit.
It's crazy. it's like doable, like to be at the top of the industry if you do the right work and you're following the right, you know, path.
For sure. I mean, Eilish, I gotta say, there's one part of like that wasn't an overnight success. Her team is insane.
Yeah,
insane. Yeah. And like even since she was like 13 or 12 or something like that, she had, you know, management and marketing and image, and it grew. And then her brother's skill grew at the same time doing her own stuff. So this was like, you know, it's magic what they make as far as I'm concerned. Some people really aren't a fan, but I think you can't hate when you hear someone like Tom Lord Alge ranting about how amazing it is that they did that. And I love Tom Lord Alge's mentality, because there's this video of him talking about Billie Eilish where he kind of goes on a mini rant about like, there's no voodoo that the Lord Alge brothers do. There's nothing too crazy that it's that. Like you can make a hit, a Grammy winning song in your bedroom. There's proof coming of that every day. It's the process, not like the gear. It's like the mindset, not the, the racks of toys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, well, first of all, Phineas is like my dream guest for this show. Like when I started the show, I was like, okay, one day let's get Phineas on the show.
You're going to do it. I love that dream.
Yeah, that's like I guess that was like my idea of these are the kind of guests I want to have on. People that are kind of doing new things and I guess, are fresh and hip and actually doing it and doing like, I don't know, being real about it as well.
He interviews good.
Yeah, but you touched on something important there, which is, it's just, I guess because, so many people are, everyone has the tools, right? It's all out there. There's no secrets really, because there's, even if like there's Mixed with the Masters, there's podcasts like this, like everyone that's doing it pretty much is giving away, the farm, like there's nothing really to hide. So it's just, I think the lesson there is to kind of really be yourself when you're working. I don't know. Cause like if everyone else can do anything, like you just got to double down on what you do best,
Absolutely. And know that there's different ways to go about it. I think a lot of people will get sucked into one type of working, and that's just one style. Like when I was doing school, there was definitely a certain mindset that was in play and a little bit of how you kind of work with people. After that, I went to go work with intern for the person that did the records that made me want to get into music, like recording specifically. So one thing I missed in my intro is that like when I was going to university every day, I was listening to the same record, which was a band called Mother Mother with the Oh My Heart record. They just blew up on TikTok, just, internationally now, but as like Canadian and North American. They're a really awesome indie pop band. And I was like, how did they get that sound? How did they do that? So after school, I ended up being able to reach out to the producer who was local and say like, I love your stuff. Can I come work with you? And he was very gracious in letting me, to come in and actually, hang out. And, first day was cleaning up cat pee because this cat peed behind the rack of gear and I had to wipe like 24 cables of cat pee, which sounds terrible, but it was a little bit trial by fire. He's had other like, assistants and engineers and stuff in the past want to hang out. So it's like, all right, well, if you can do this a little bit for me, then I'll actually let you hang out and watch stuff. So his mentality of working with an artist was totally different from Garth's, and was really, really amazing. His whole approach to it of working with an artist was something I hadn't seen before. And this really opened my eyes to, what you can do with a person where there's a deeper, honest connection about it rather than, some of the pump up stuff. You want to get an artist stoked, but there's also really something to be said for touching on their heart. And Howard Redekop did this so well. But his whole thing when he
what was his name?
Howard Redekop. He also did like Tegan and Sarah back in the day and a bunch of phenomenal stuff. Like really amazing dude. I worked for him for a year, and even off the top, he said like, these are my settings on guitar ambience, reverb plugins, and here's how I set up my mix or whatever. But it doesn't mean shit if you don't know why you're doing it and it doesn't mean anything if you haven't recorded it properly off the top or made the right arrangement. And working with him was so eye-opening, because I just saw how this very honest, touching person was able to connect with people in that same way. And as a mentor, that like made me take it and go and want to just kind of take off with it. And then coupling with people like Sylvia Massey, who does very similar stuff, but then is also like an ultra nerd, like loves doing weird shit. She's the one setting up microphones through tubes and doing, has a mic museum and like is everyone's favorite nerd. She can have the honesty of like getting stuff out of people and working really hard and being really critical. And then is also like a major gear nerd. And there's all these kind of people that led to my current approach to stuff. I feel like I've lost the question a little bit.
Yeah. No. That wasn't a question. We were just talking about like being yourself and doubling down on that. But yeah, I mean, speaking of that, like what's your workflow look like? How do you usually start projects? I guess you could talk about different types of genres, even like maybe how you work with a singer-songwriter versus a band. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
It's always so dependent on the artist that I'm being given, or that's coming across my plate. at this point, I'm still really trying to refine my onboarding of stuff. Some people work really well with having a Google Sheet on there, which I'd like to have to help answer some questions. But at the first top, it's like the thing I always ask people is, why me? Why did you come hit me up?